Okay, y'all, so I see him. There's Papoose. You guys told me he was on the end, so I had to go back and look. And yeah, he's there. And there's Remy, Mom, Fat Joe. So, Carissa, Papoose.
Y'all, this wasn't just another Instagram live. It unfolded like a slow, brutal collision, the kind that makes you realize you're watching a relationship collapse in real time, with millions as witnesses and no rewind to soften the impact. Because the second Papoose went live, something snapped in the air. You could feel it instantly. This wasn't rage designed for clicks. This wasn't chaotic clout chasing. This was a man finally cracking under the weight of everything he'd kept buried and deciding the truth would fall where it may. His eyes weren't wild. They were vacant. The stare of someone who had already accepted the fallout and pressed go anyway. Then the words landed. A night kept in the shadows. A cycle repeating behind closed doors. And a name that froze the chat mid-scroll. 50-cent screens lit up. Comments raced. Recording icons appeared everywhere. Because what Papoose started revealing didn't sound like rumor. It sounded pulled straight from pain. He spoke about moments never meant to surface. Exchanges never meant to escape private space. A closeness that crossed lines people insisted never existed. And with every sentence, the tension tightened. But what came next is what shook everyone. When he hinted that the damage wasn't just about betrayal, that it struck at the core of his family, the energy shifted completely. This stopped being celebrity gossip. This turned into fallout. His voice wavered. His breathing broke rhythm. And right there on camera, composure slipped through his fingers. This wasn't staged drama. This was collapse. Within minutes, clips were everywhere. Timelines splintered. Some called it honesty. Others called it unraveling. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. This didn't happen overnight. This moment had been building quietly, intentionally, painfully. By the time the live cut off, nothing felt intact. Not the bond. Not the public image. Not the story people thought they understood. And while the internet argued sides, one truth lingered. When silence breaks this violently, it's because the damage was done long before anyone was watching. This wasn't resolution. This was the moment everything passed the point of no return.
That not y'all know, but the one besides Keish that I always talk about, and every time I see him, I tell him thank you, because it wasn't like we was enemies or what. We didn't hang out together. Was 50 Cent, Mr. Curtis Jackson.
Wow.
Whenever I put in for an appellate judgment or an appeal, he made sure that letters was written. He personally signed them, telling, the judge, if you do grant her this release, she'll have a job.
Fasten your seatbelt, because what played out wasn't a live stream. It was a sworn statement without a judge, a marriage placed on display under invisible lights, and a silence so pressurized it finally split open in real time. This didn't begin with yelling. It began with quiet. The kind of quiet that signals the choice was made long before the camera ever blinked on. Papoose appeared controlled, almost distant, like someone delivering a conclusion he never wanted to reach. No performance. No provocation. Just a gaze that suggested whatever followed had already taken its toll. And when he spoke, it wasn't to convince, it was to log what he claimed were facts into the public archive. Almost immediately, the energy changed. Not through volume, but through resolve. He didn't present his words as theory. He laid them out like evidence. A chronology. A rhythm. A pattern that, according to him, had been unfolding quietly beside the life everyone thought was solid. And then came the phrase that shattered the room. A hidden night. Not hearsay. Not a mistake. A night that, he alleged, wasn't alone, only concealed. As viewers struggled to process, the comments began to resemble a packed courtroom. Gasps. Denials. Rapid documentation through screenshots and recordings. The kind of focus that sharpens when people sense consequence. And when the name 50 Cent surfaced, it didn't register as drama. It landed like a name read aloud from a sealed file, instantly raising the stakes. What followed wasn't leaked footage or exposed receipts. It was suggestion delivered with precision. Papoose spoke of private exchanges, allegedly saved, not as spectacle, but as something he had chosen not to unleash. He referenced audio messages that carried an intimacy impossible to misread. He referenced conversations that implied planning rather than chance. Nothing was shown. Nothing was played. And somehow, that absence made it heavier. Because suggestion can do what proof sometimes can't. It forces the audience to complete the picture themselves. As the live stretched on, he described a place that didn't need to be named to be recognized. Wealth. Seclusion. Late hours. According to him, the kind of setting where lines blur because no one expects eyes watching. He avoided specifics. He didn't need them. He spoke like someone who had already traced connections he never wanted to acknowledge. Then the air shifted. He stopped. Inhaled. And said the harm didn't end with betrayal. That's where the story crossed into territory no platform can soften. He spoke of uncertainty seeping into places it should never touch. Of trust dissolving so completely that even sacred assumptions felt unsafe. He didn't shout accusations. He admitted doubt. And everyone felt the weight of that distinction. In that instant, this stopped being content. It became grief, his voice fractured, not with fury, but with loss. The kind that isn't seeking punishment, only relief. He spoke of loving without limits and realizing too late that love had been met with performance. Of living inside something that looked stable from the outside, while slowly learning it was held together by omission. He didn't ask viewers to choose sides. He asked them to hear him. The comments exploded. Some demanded full exposure. Others pleaded for restraint. The divide was immediate and permanent. Support clashed with unease. Compassion collided with fear. But no one disengaged. Because once doubt is spoken, it doesn't return to silence. As clips spread in real time, interpretations formed faster than confirmation. Analysts dissected his wording. Experts replayed his pauses. Old interviews resurfaced and were re-examined through a sharper lens. Moments once brushed off as harmless closeness were suddenly reframed, stitched together by an audience desperate for clarity, and then there was the quiet. No instant rebuttal. No denial. No explanation. A silence that felt intentional or perhaps paralyzing. In moments like this, silence becomes ammunition for some and restraint for others. Either way, it tilts the scale. By the time the live ended, nothing had been settled. No evidence released. No additional names spoken. Just a promise, fragile, volatile, that more would eventually make sense. That clarity would arrive. That whatever the truth was, it had been postponed long enough. The hours that followed turned the story fluid. Headlines hedged carefully. Panels argued breakdown versus strategy. Fans split into factions that mirrored juries unable to agree. Some claimed this was a man unraveling under pressure. Others believed it was the opening move of a calculated exposure, but beneath all of it sat a quieter truth. The pain looked genuine, not packaged, not rehearsed. Genuine enough to unsettle. Genuine enough to remind everyone that behind public images are private consequences that don't wait for approval. The mention of family ensured this could never be boxed as mere scandal again. It carried moral weight now. And weight drags everything into focus. As night gave way to mourning, the language shifted. Shock turned into scrutiny. Scrutiny into pattern seeking. People stopped asking what happened and started asking how long it had been happening. Why the breaking point was public. Why now? Why exposure instead of repair? The most unsettling explanation wasn't cruelty. It was fatigue. Fatigue from holding unanswered questions. From guarding a version of reality that no longer aligned with lived truth. From believing silence could protect something already lost. That reading didn't require villains. It required time, and time, once spent, doesn't bargain. By sunrise, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't a moment meant to pass. It was a fracture destined to widen with every attempt to ignore it. Careers would move forward. Projects would drop. Appearances would continue. But the narrative had already embedded itself where reputations linger long after attention fades. When someone breaks on live not for spectacle, but under the weight of accumulated truth, the break isn't the headline. The years leading to it are. And once those years are exposed, nothing resets. The court of public opinion doesn't wait for exhibits. It reads tone. It studies restraint. It senses when silence has been stretched too far. And in that sense, the verdict wasn't delivered, but the trial had clearly begun. What comes next won't be louder. It will be heavier, because once silence shatters, every pause starts to testify. When the stream cut off, the fallout moved faster than anyone could refresh. Clips were spreading before Papoose even left the screen. Cropped screenshots, alleged audio fragments, and dimly filtered recordings flooded timelines, picked apart by fans, pundits, and reporters who sense disorder the way predators sense blood. Every hesitation, every broken phrase, every silence was treated like an exhibit in a trial with no bench, only millions of watching eyes. People weren't just observing anymore, they were assembling connections they hadn't known were there, and the implications felt seismic. The internet fractured instantly. One side argued this was intentional, a delayed reckoning executed with precision. They replayed footage frame by frame, slowed his pauses, dissected the pitch of his voice. They cataloged each tremble, each controlled breath, convinced he'd been suppressing years of betrayal and restraint. To them, nothing was accidental. Every line felt measured. Every disclosure felt positioned to land maximum impact. The other side saw something else entirely, a man coming apart. They focused on the emotions spilling through the cracks, the wavering tone, the visible loss of control. They didn't see a tactician. They saw someone internally destroyed, someone whose marriage and reality had been quietly corroding while the world looked the other way. Hovering over all of it was one name, hanging like a shadow that refused to lift. 50 Cent was no longer just mentioned, he became a pivot. A factor that shifted everything. Each leaked message, each screenshot, Each whispered audio suggested a closeness that reached beyond platonic lines. Allegedly, there were shared jokes and private language, moments where intimacy replaced performance, moments Papoose framed as too personal to dismiss. Viewers parsed every detail, reconstructing unseen nights, imagining doors closed and conversations never meant to escape the room. Then audio attributed to Remy Ma began circulating, quiet, controlled, but heavy. Snippets that appeared to echo what the messages implied. Allegedly, she spoke in codes, referencing arrangements and understandings that hinted at a reality Papoose claimed he never anticipated. She allegedly mentioned plans that only deeply connected people could coordinate timelines and meetings that, in his telling, defied coincidence. Comment sections erupted. Shock emojis. Disbelief. Rapid-fire theories. Some cried betrayal. Others murmured tragedy. Each scroll felt like watching history assemble itself, except this history was soaked in heartbreak. When family entered the conversation, the ground shifted. Papoose spoke about doubts surrounding paternity, not as rumor, but as a confession that cut through every layer of protection he had built. He referenced alleged messages and voice notes where Remy Ma's words suggested uncertainty, intentional ambiguity, manipulation disguised as reassurance. At that point, this stopped being celebrity spectacle. This was about identity, bloodlines, trust, and betrayal colliding in real time. When his daughter was mentioned, the weight doubled. Viewers didn't just react, they recoiled, understanding that the consequences were intimate, permanent, and ethically tangled. Social media never slowed. Threads multiplied. Analysts attempted to map timelines, but each new clip contradicted another. The narrative refused to settle. Fans revisited old interviews, appearances, and collaborations between Remy Ma and 50 Cent, now filtered through suspicion. What once looked casual suddenly appeared deliberate. Smiles, proximity, shared moments, all recast as potential signals. To many, the pattern became impossible to ignore, a long-concealed closeness stretching across years, abruptly illuminated by the collapse of silence. Even established outlets moved carefully, repeating the word alleged like a shield. The public, however, showed no restraint. Every comment, reaction video, and short-form recap became testimony. People weren't just consuming the story, they were ruling on it. And Papoose's restraint, his refusal to play everything in full, somehow amplified the impact. The quiet felt heavier than proof. The implication lingered like a weight pressing down harder than any receipt could. Hours passed into relentless analysis. Every inflection, every movement, replayed endlessly. Fans combed through old posts, past collaborations, forgotten captions, hunting for context. Interviews were re-examined. Lines once ignored now sounded prophetic. Jokes became innuendo. Compliments morphed into signals. As speculation intensified, the emotional toll became unavoidable. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was cultural autopsy, private pain exposed to collective judgment, ethical arguments ignited. Was public exposure justified for something deeply personal? Did alleged betrayal excuse this level of visibility? Did pain grant permission? Each position amplified itself online, crashing into the next. And throughout it all, 50 Cent's presence remained unspoken yet dominant, a figure existing as much in suggestion as in action. Every reference, every hint, every fragment pulled viewers deeper into the unraveling. Papoose's voice faltered at moments, but he continued. Each confession, each allegation, each carefully worded implication stacked the shock higher. The emotion didn't feel manufactured. It felt raw. Every pause, every breath carried years of swallowed hurt and unnoticed devotion. It was like watching someone emotionally dismantle himself in real time, narrating his own undoing piece by piece. While debates over motive and morality raged, the tragedy stayed central. Children, families, and private lives became collateral in a spectacle that had outgrown control. What collapsed wasn't just a man, it was trust, identity, and the illusion that image could protect what was sacred. Each leak, each suggestion, each alleged secret cut deeper into the foundation of everything he believed. The audience wasn't just watching, it was amplifying, turning private devastation into a viral echo chamber. By the second hour, the live stream had evolved into something else entirely: evidence, confession, and tragedy all at once. People weren't simply stunned, they were unsettled, sympathetic, and transfixed. Patterns were visible. Consequences felt enormous. The emotional force was undeniable. What began as a live broadcast now existed as a cultural flashpoint, an ethical puzzle, and a viral event no caption could fully summarize. The story had shifted shape. It wasn't only about infidelity. It became about power, silence, loyalty, deception, and what happens when secrets surface publicly. About how a single moment on camera can fracture not just a marriage, but the perception of an entire life, exposing cracks that had long been ignored and could no longer be hidden. And as clips continued to circulate, hashtags climbed, and commentary escalated, one reality settled in. This was only the beginning, and the fallout would ripple through every corner of the internet, reshaping how millions understood love, trust, and betrayal inside one of the most public marriages imaginable. The fallout from the live refused to settle, rolling forward like a storm that never finds its eye. Clips, screenshots, and alleged audio had already blanketed the internet, but now the narrative began peeling back further layers. Viewers and commentators combed through every sentence Papoose had spoken, every tremble in his voice, every pause loaded with implication. This wasn't passive viewing anymore, it was collective reconstruction. A story once sealed now appeared to reveal years of carefully buried truths erupting all at once. The alleged recordings hinted at something deeper than fleeting suspicion. Supposed voice notes involving Remy Ma and 50 Cent suggested a closeness that Papoose framed as a wound cutting far past ordinary heartbreak. Audiences replayed fragments obsessively, listening for cadence, tone, shared laughter, small signals that pointed to something more intimate than friendship. Allegedly, these weren't isolated exchanges, but part of a sustained pattern, deliberate and concealed, exposing a parallel existence Papoose claimed he uncovered only after enduring years of silence. Every clip became a forensic exercise, mined for signs of planning, secret rendezvous, and an ease that stunned viewers. What intensified the shock were the alleged messages surfacing alongside the audio. Texts appeared to imply coordination, foresight, and emotional language that crossed unmistakable lines. Phrases like, "our time" and "keep it quiet" were said to appear, suggesting a hidden world operating while Papoose remained loyal and unaware. The public watched what looked like a double life being assembled piece by piece, with consequences reaching straight into family, trust, and betrayal. The planning wasn't just startling, it felt methodical. Then came the most crushing layer, words attributed directly to Remy Ma, allegedly captured, expressing deeper attachment to 50 Cent and acknowledging calculated deception toward Papoose. She was said to admit using stability and image while emotionally tied elsewhere. Alleged audio referenced her daughter, Reminisce Mackenzie, hinting that aspects of her life and questions of paternity had been intentionally obscured. Papoose later described hearing this as a physical blow, trust collapsing instantly, foundations splintering as the realization set in live. The comment feed detonated as the weight of it landed. Shock collided with fury, empathy with disbelief. Viewers argued whether this was a planned revelation or a man breaking under unbearable truth. Analysts debated possible legal and emotional consequences, while fans rebuilt timelines by revisiting old interviews, posts, and collaborations. Moments once seen as harmless were suddenly reframed under suspicion, darkened by new context. Emotionally, Papoose's restraint visibly thinned. His facial shifts, the falter in his voice, the measured silences were read as unfiltered evidence of someone confronting a reality he thought he knew only to find it false. Allegedly, the leaks suggested a bond between Remy Ma and 50 Cent that extended beyond professional or friendly boundaries. Each laugh, each term of familiarity cited in the material reinforced the sense of emotional betrayal few could fully process. By the stage, the story had grown beyond any single incident. Online communities traced years of interactions between Remy Ma and 50 Cent, highlighting patterns that implied longevity. Interviews, lyrics, red carpet moments, even casual posts were revisited. Each reinterpretation strengthened the belief that what Papoose alleged wasn't sudden, it was sustained, carefully hidden, and now impossible to deny. Traditional media proceeded cautiously, but the digital sphere showed no restraint. Threads multiplied. Videos dissected every alleged detail. Ethical questions loomed. This wasn't mere celebrity gossip, but a portrait of manipulation, secrecy, and emotional devastation unfolding publicly. The supposed evidence painted a picture of calculated concealment, turning an intensely private crisis into a spectacle with no off switch. The paternity questions deepened the tragedy. Allegedly, messages and audio hinted that truths about Reminisce Mackenzie's parentage were deliberately blurred. Papoose's pain, magnified by public exposure, became the emotional center of a narrative both deeply personal and culturally explosive. Viewers weren't just watching a breakdown, they were grappling with questions of trust, morality, and identity in real time. As days passed, the story kept mutating. Commentators and fans revisited every clip and phrase, debating intent and motive. Social media morphed into an endless courtroom where no verdict stuck. Allegedly, Papoose's choice to speak publicly was a bid to reclaim control from a narrative already slipping away. Each pause, tear, and fractured word was looped and reinterpreted without mercy. The weight of the exposure was intensified by its visibility. Grief became content. Pain became debate. Private collapse transformed into viral currency. Family, reputation, loyalty, and identity all hung in the balance, and the alleged leaks ensured the impact would linger. Papoose's visible unraveling became symbolic. Allegedly, the accumulated material portrayed consistent emotional betrayal and intentional deception, with viewers watching him confront years of hidden truth. The pace was relentless, the intensity suffocating, the emotional pull undeniable. Each revelation shocked not just because of its content, but because it forced a reckoning with how fragile trust truly is once secrecy dissolves in public. By the close of this chapter, the conclusion was unavoidable. This surpassed scandal. It was a tragedy long unfolding in silence, now released in the most public, viral, and emotionally punishing way possible. Papoose's live didn't just fracture his reality, it reshaped how loyalty, betrayal, and exposure are understood in the public eye. Every viewer had become part of something simultaneously intimate and cultural, impossible to look away from. The aftermath didn't recede. Clips kept circulating. Inflections were reanalyzed. Alleged evidence was debated and reframed. Hashtags climbed. Commentary multiplied. And through it all, one fact remained unchanged. The harm couldn't be undone, the emotional damage was deep, and the narrative was permanently etched into public memory. The heartbreak, the alleged deception, the intimacy revealed had ignited a viral storm poised to define this moment in celebrity culture for years. Every strand of the story, from rumored hotel meetings to secret messages, voice notes, and confessions, underscored the volatility of human emotion, the brittleness of trust, and the ruthless reach of viral exposure. As audiences watched, argued, and shared, they witnessed a private catastrophe transformed into public fixation, a live moment that erased the boundary between gossip, news, and consequence. In the end, it was undeniable. Papoose's collapse wasn't fleeting, it was a cultural rupture, a viral tragedy, and a reminder that when private betrayals meet public scrutiny, the damage isn't temporary. It's permanent. The story had secured its place as one of the most emotionally charged and unforgettable celebrity crises of the digital age. Strap in, because what just erupted isn't background noise you swipe past. It's a rupture in the core of celebrity loyalty, betrayal, and loss. Papoose's live didn't merely hint at alleged truths, it set them off in plain sight, freezing millions mid-scroll and forcing a reevaluation of everything assumed to be solid. The supposed closeness, the private audio, the hidden exchanges, and the crushing paternity doubts transformed a private fracture into a public calamity with viral reach. Every captured second, every hushed phrase, every tear crossing his face underscored a brutal reality. Status and success offer no protection from the ache of betrayal. What viewers are left with is the wreckage of a life that looked unbreakable, now revealed to be split far beneath the surface. The alleged material points to manipulation, concealment, and a parallel existence carefully maintained, suddenly exposed to the glare of the timeline. Audiences aren't just reacting, they're rebuilding chronologies, tracing patterns, and confronting the truth that private decisions can detonate publicly, leaving marks that don't fade. This goes beyond gossip. It's a warning about faith, allegiance, and the cost of staying quiet too long. Papoose's unraveling is unmistakably human, unfiltered, uncomfortable, and revealing how fragile bonds become when deceit hides in the margins. Each clip, each response, each viral breakdown feeds the momentum, pulling eyes back again and again. So pay attention. Pass it on. Question every angle. Because once secrets with this much force surface, quiet is no longer possible. The world has watched a collapse that will reverberate for years, and whatever truth emerges, along with the alleged receipts and lingering pain, is still taking shape. Stay watching, stay unsettled, and don't blink, because this chapter hasn't reached its end.